and had to question why I was doing what I was doing. What is the impact I'm having? What have I learned over the years? And is this what I want to be doing? And it ended with yes, absolutely. I absolutely want to keep questioning why. I do think that we have so much further to go around workplace cultures, around gender equality, around flexible workplaces. And I'm not ready to quit yet. So I'm going to keep going.
This is the podcast where a bit of business and a bite of technology come together. Every month, I interview entrepreneurs, investors, startup founders, and people in tech to learn about what drives them and what makes them tick. I'm really excited for you all to listen to this episode with Jennifer Hargreaves, who's the founder. I'm really excited for you all to listen to this episode with Jennifer Hargreaves, who's the founder of Tellent, a diversity recruitment and social impact company that is striving to close the talent gap in the new work economy. Their mission is to increase women's economic contribution, progress gender equity, and prepare companies for evolving workforce trends to stay competitive in the future of work. Besides a free job board, Tellent has a paid membership option. This is a professional networking community and mastermind group for job seekers and freelancers to find and build flexible work. 60 to 80% of jobs are filled before they are advertised. Your network and community play a key role in finding your next opportunity. So who do you want to surround yourself with? Tellent is offering Bacon Bits and Bites listeners 15% off their 6-month membership for professionals. You can visit the website wearetellent.com. That's TELLENT. Use the word making work better for everyone. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Bacon Bits and Bites podcast. And today's special guest is Jennifer Hargreaves, the founder and CEO of Tellent. Tellent is a flexible work recruitment and social impact organization with a mission to create more opportunities for women to lead and earn. Through a job board and virtual networking platform, she supports women on their journeys to finding work that works for them. Tellent also helps forward-thinking and inclusive businesses to access professional and skilled talent when and how they need it so that they can thrive in our current economic climate and future of work. She was educated in Canada and has lived and worked in New Zealand, New York, and London, UK. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thanks so much for having me, Karen.
Oh, I'm so excited to chat with you today. So I'm going to start the conversation off with reading something from the bio on your site. It says that while my primary school teachers didn't appreciate my questions challenging why, I embraced that curiosity and the perspective that comes with challenging the status quo to create impactful and lasting change. So why do you think you were always challenging authority?
So I bet there's a number of listeners out there who can listen to this as well, or who can relate to this as well. And my parents will attest to this as well. I was always the kid asking why. All the time. Go sit in your desk. Why do I have to sit in my desk? Can't I stand? It feels more comfortable. I can learn more. Come home at 4:00. Why do I have to come home at 4:00? What's happening at 4:00? Can't I go to the park on the way home? Do this. Why do I need to do it that way? Why can't I do it this way? It makes more sense. So just really not trying to be obnoxious at all, but really trying to understand why things were done the way they were done. And it got me into a lot of trouble at school. And it got me into a lot of trouble at home. And it took me a very long time to realize, and at work, in my career as well, the same thing. People saying, why can't you just do what you're told? And I've always been really terrible at doing what I'm told unless I understand why I'm doing it. And that's what makes more sense to me. And that's actually how my company started as well, is I kind of felt like in order to do a good job at work, I had to be at an office between the hours of 9 to 5, and I just couldn't understand why. Why, when I'm more productive at home? Why, when increased flexibility would allow me to do other things in my life that made me happy, which would in turn make me a more productive and better worker? I don't understand it. Why are we still behind on gender equality all this time? Like after all these years, why haven't things changed? So it's really given me this perspective of, like you said, challenging the status quo and simply just asking why. And to this day, it drives my husband bonkers.
That's really funny. I was actually just thinking in my head as you were mentioning as a student, you were questioning why do you have to sit down? You want to stand. And of course, now people are using standing desks and finding it
Yes.
really comfortable. So you kind of already had that foresight.
Right? Honestly, I should have made a lot more inventions.
So when you were growing up, did you feel you had an entrepreneurial spirit? Like, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
It's so interesting you asked that because I feel like I was a bit of a reluctant entrepreneur, to be honest. And I always felt like these qualities of questioning why and being curious, girls are typically told to sit down and be quiet, right? It's just one of those things that society has taught us to do or assume that we should do. And I was, like I said, always in trouble. So I learned to associate the curiosity with not being a very valued quality or personality trait. And I had no interest in becoming an entrepreneur and using a skill set that just always got me in trouble. I wanted to do, because I love exploring and questioning and everything else, was channel that into a business. So my career goal was to be an international business development manager. I even had a title. But I had that vision of me traveling from country to country, opening up new markets in a power suit, carrying my briefcase, walking up a big set of stairs into an office building. I had the whole vision. That's where I was going. Yeah, it wasn't an entrepreneur.
That's interesting. So, with respect to your first job growing up, what was it and what did you learn from it?
Very interesting. My first job was working at McDonald's, actually. I was the head of drive-through. So I would
Oh,
take everybody's orders for drive-through. And I learned that you can get sick of a Big Mac.
that's hilarious. And with your past job experience, you've lived and worked abroad in countries such as UK and New Zealand. What have you learned from those?
It was such a fantastic
New Zealand, what have you learned from those?
it was such a fantastic experience. So I did my last semester of university in Canterbury in New Zealand, down in Christchurch. And I started working with the Economic Development Agency there, helping companies go offshore. And it was the first real experience where I got to see how New Zealand's a very small country and it's not connected like we're connected to the US. So they had a much broader worldview than I was used to. And it was my first sort of introduction to the world is bigger than Canada. And I found that fascinating, especially as we were looking at different markets where the products could go and how we could help companies go overseas. And that really just spurred my love of, again, just being curious and how do other people do things and what is business like over there and how can we create more opportunities. And yeah, it was just a phenomenal experience. And through that job, I was posted in a diplomatic posting to New York. So that role took me to different ways they could enter the market, different partnerships, different investment strategies, different marketing models, and also within an industry that I wasn't familiar with at all. So I was working in the biotech and bioactive ingredients sector with some medical device products as well. So again, just an incredible learning curve, and working with a manager as well who encouraged me and saw that spark of curiosity and challenge and lit the flame, let's say, to stop just following what was happening and start thinking for myself outside of the box and really getting curious.
Did you find that these work experiences influenced you to start Talent?
Yes. So what happened from New York is I moved to London, England, and I started working as a business development manager. And it was a very different experience than what I was used to. And it was the first time I'd really experienced bias and discrimination in the workforce. And I don't even think they knew it was happening. I think it was just a cultural thing than what I was used to. And it was the first time I'd really experienced bias and discrimination in the workforce. And I don't even think they knew it was happening. I think it was just a cultural thing. And by cultural, I don't mean all of the UK is like this. I mean, within the company that I worked for, where it was assumed I could do a lot less than I was capable of doing. And I thought to myself, oh, I'll get there. They'll realize, I'll just keep working hard, put my head down. And at some point, they're going to realize that I can do a heck of a lot more than book flights, right? And organize diaries. Like I've been working for 10 years in international business development. I have a lot of value I can add that goes beyond clipping adverts for an advertising agency. So I thought, oh, it'll come. And it didn't come. And instead, I was made redundant when I was pregnant. And I feel like that experience was a catalyst for me starting Tellent, because it really hit my self-worth very hard and my confidence. And then I was made redundant on top of that when I became pregnant. And there was all these messages as well around pregnancy and motherhood and career that I didn't really even realize was a thing until I sort of ran into this brick wall of, I guess, bias and discrimination in the workforce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could kind of relate in the sense of with one of my previous jobs, I felt the same way where I thought to myself, okay, if I just keep on working hard, I'll get noticed, I'll be able to get a promotion and move up the ladder. But we all know that working hard is not enough. You definitely need more than that. Including networking can be a valuable skill, which actually we'll talk about later on in the episode. So, still staying on the topic of you building Tellent, what was it like during the first couple of years? Did you encounter any significant obstacles and how did you overcome them?
So I started Tellent when I moved back to Canada, and I was pregnant with my second child.
And how did you overcome them?
So I started Tellent when I moved back to Canada, and I was pregnant with my second child, and I was looking for a job that would give me the career growth that I wanted and the family life that I wanted, and I couldn't find anything. And that really was a catalyst to launching Tellent, was that if all these companies are out there saying we need more women in leadership, and all these women are saying I need more flexibility, well, why aren't we connecting the two? This is back to my why, Karen, is
Mm-hmm.
why aren't they talking about their flexible workplaces? Why aren't they talking about their culture in a way that resonates with women? If we've done the survey and we've done the research and we know that experienced professional women, the number one thing they are looking for in an employer is a culture of flexibility and work-life balance. Why aren't we talking about that in our job descriptions? Especially if we already have it. And if we don't have it, why aren't we rethinking it? Especially as it's cost effective, you get more productive employees, launching Tellent. So one of the bigger challenges getting started was low self-esteem and low confidence. So yes, I was questioning why. Yes, I saw a solution, but in my experience, questioning why and pushing forward with solutions didn't always end well. And it took me a long time to get really comfortable with the fact that actually being curious and asking questions is a gift, because that's how things change. Nothing would ever change if somebody didn't say, hey, isn't there a way to do it better? Or, oh, why aren't we doing it like that? So it took a really long time. Even as I was starting my business and growing my business, I had both my kids at home with me, just second guessing myself. And is this the right thing? Who am I to do this? I don't have a background in HR or recruitment or diversity and inclusion. No one's going to listen to me. So I'd say the first biggest hurdle was it was internal. I really had to get over the idea that I wasn't good enough to do this solution, because if I'd come up with a solution, no one else had, or no one else was doing it. So why not put it out there? Why not try it and see how it goes? And having conversations with myself of, so what? If you fail, what's the worst case scenario? I don't have a lot of money invested in this. I've invested a lot of time, but there's learnings coming out of this. And at one point in the company, I did actually consider folding it and getting a job, like a job, like a real full-time in an office job. And I really had to question why I was doing what I was doing. What is the impact I'm having? What have I learned over the years? And is this what I want to be doing? And it ended with yes, absolutely. I absolutely want to keep questioning why. I do think that we have so much further to go around workplace cultures, around gender equality, around flexible workplaces. And I'm not ready to quit yet. So I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned your experience. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned you were experiencing a lot of self-doubt, and I think pretty much every entrepreneur goes through that. But I'm also beginning to wonder if this is more common amongst women to have these limiting beliefs, because we always ask ourselves, are we qualified enough? Where I remember reading an article with men, not necessarily with respect to starting businesses, but even with applying for jobs, they'll apply for jobs if they're only, say, 50, 60%, whereas women tend to feel they need to be almost 100% qualified. So yeah, it's strange how we experience this imposter syndrome. But the thing is, the way I see it, if you start to do those things, like start working at the things to build a business, you'll gain that experience, right?
Absolutely. And you probably already have it. You're just not giving yourself credit for, right? So it comes a little bit back to at school, we're taught to be quiet and follow the rules, work hard and you'll get noticed. And I think men or boys are encouraged to, they're loud, but they're not told to sit down and be quiet. They're like, oh, silly Johnny over there, right? What a class clown he is, but he's brilliant. So they're encouraged to speak up and be bold and take risks. And I know things are changing around gender stereotyping and traditional gender roles, which is amazing. And it's certainly in my household, how I treat my son and daughter, I'm very conscious of it. But these are social cues that we've been doing for hundreds of years. And I think that's a lot of where the imposter syndrome comes from too, is if a man brags or talks about an accomplishment, well, he's successful. But if a woman does it, then she's bragging and arrogant, right? So there's that double standard for men and women, right? If a man speaks up, he's confident. If a woman does, she's a bitch, right? It's just the double standard that unfortunately we've been raised with. But women are so freaking amazing, and they have the skill set that I see come through my community and my network. We just need to get rid of that imposter syndrome and boost their confidence and get them talking about their skills as well. And I truly also believe that this solution came to me because there's a problem. I don't think I'm the only person who's had this problem. So who's going to fix it if not me? And this is what I always come back to as well. If not me, then who?
Yes.
Right?
Or another question too, if not now, then when?
Exactly. If not now, when? Am I going to wait another 20 years and see what happens? Are we going to wait until it's my daughter's generation? If not now, when? If not me, who? Right? Let's just do it.
Yep. And as I've said in my previous episodes, like think like Nike, just do it.
Oh, I like that.
So I'm very impressed with the size of the community you have built over the past years. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's over 8,000?
Yeah, so that's the network. Our general network it's actually over 9,000 now. We've been growing. And we have a talent community, which is a virtual networking platform, and mastermind group. And there's 99 women in there. We need one more to make it 100.
All right, listeners. So if you're interested in joining a mastermind group, make sure you reach out to Jennifer. So since you have experience building a community, what advice would you give to people who are looking to build a community, whether it be for a passion project or for a business?
This is something I actually struggled with quite a bit, was being authentic and vulnerable. For anybody who knows me one-on-one, I am 100% authentic, but how do you show up in front of people you're trying to sell to? How do you show up in front of people you're trying to lead? How do you show up as authentic and vulnerable when people are looking to you for guidance? And that's something I struggled with. And my advice would be to be authentic, to have conversations. It doesn't have to be, I thought vulnerability and authenticity meant telling people my flaws, but it's not. It's just being open and talking about yourself and some of the experiences that you're going through as well, or relating to people, and really listening. So I would say be authentic and show up as yourself, and people will love it. People buy people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with networking. When you're networking and building relationships, people buy people. People hire people they know. They hire people they like. So if you want to get hired through networking and are using that as a channel to boost your job search, get to know people, build meaningful relationships. Same with growing the community.
Mm-hmm. Touching on networking, so prior to the pandemic, many people were accustomed to networking in person, and I've been told lots of times that through people who enjoyed networking in person, like, oh, that's the only way to go. You can have authentic conversations. And as someone who was an introvert, I always disagree with it because I did the majority of my networking online. So I'm curious to know, like, what are some tips you have for people who are trying to network effectively online?
First of all, I want to say I agree with you 100%. I'm not an introvert, but I'm not an extrovert. I'm somewhere in between. But going into the rooms in a physical event where you don't know anyone, I just found excruciatingly painful. So having a virtual networking platform and networking digitally has been amazing for me, and I absolutely love doing it. I get such a high out of networking now. So some tips for how to do it, I would say pick your platform. If you try and hit every single platform and network across everything, you're just going to get overwhelmed and you will literally spend all day lost in social media. So depending on what your objectives are, and I would say start with your profile, make sure that you've got a professional profile, because if anyone's going to recommend you or if anyone's going to go back and click on your profile, you want to make sure that you're presented how you want to be presented. And then start commenting on other people's posts. So it doesn't have to be aggressive networking. A number of women I've heard say before, I have nothing to add, I have nothing to contribute, but you do. You can be positive. You can say, good luck. If somebody's posted a question, if you don't have the answer for it, say, I don't have the answer for it, but I hope you find it. So it doesn't have to be, because we always say when you're building a reciprocal relationship, you want to start by giving first. And by being of service. So really listening to what other people are asking for and helping them out. And that's where the relationship build starts, is by being helpful and being of service. So being of service, as I said, can be anything from making a connection, making an introduction, but it can also be just being positive. That's where the relationship build starts, is by being helpful and being of service. So being of service, as I said, can be anything from making a connection, making an introduction, but it can also be just being positive or saying, hey, well done, congratulations, or, ooh, that must be tough. Better luck next time. So it doesn't have to be full on hardcore out and out, but putting comments once in a while and getting your name noticed is going to help when you apply for the job or when you ask for something later on.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's so easy to like, but really the comments stand out more, and agreeing with you on being positive. Even if somebody just says, good luck, congratulations on your new job, congratulations on launching your website, like that gives me all the fuzzy feels, and I'll definitely remember that.
That's right. It's the top of mind. So as a hiring manager, or if somebody asks you to make a recommendation, if somebody approaches me out of nowhere, but if you've been liking and commenting on my posts, if you've reached out to introduce yourself, if you sent me an article that you thought was relevant, all these things are really helpful to me. They boost my spirits. They make me happy. And then you're going to reach out and say, hey, I see that you're connected to so-and-so. Would you mind making an introduction?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then I'm much more likely to do that and to give my time back for everything that you've done in building this relationship. The number of requests I get at the moment on LinkedIn that have no introduction, it boggles my mind a little bit, because when you're connecting with people in a professional capacity, I can't even help you if I don't know what you do. I can't even help you if I don't know what you want. So being able to introduce yourself or say why you're interested in connecting with me is always very, very helpful. And I would say that's, my number one piece of advice when you're making connections and networking digitally, is let people know who you are.
Yeah, for sure.
Say why you're interested in connecting with me is always very, very helpful. And I would say that's, my number one piece of advice when you're making connections and networking digitally, is let people know who you are.
Yeah, for sure. And on top of that, I mean, you might not be able to formulate it right away, but I think it also adds an extra layer of helpfulness if the ask is specific, because then people will know how to help you. Saying, as you're saying, like, I'm looking to connect to a certain person, I'm looking for this particular type of job. Then it kind of filters out everything, like, oh, okay, I can do this, or I can send you this.
It's way easier for the person who's helping you. So we have in our flexible work mastermind group, we have an ask give post or theme on once a month. And it's, what do you need right now? How can we help you? Post below and we'll see there's 99 women in the network. So surely someone in here can probably help you. And everybody has a spirit of generosity and collaboration and abundance. So let's see, how can we help you? But experience, I'm looking to connect with other events managers in this industry. So helpful, right? Now I can go and look at my LinkedIn profile. I can put a couple of filters on it and I can pull up 3 contacts I can introduce you to. I've also had people post in the past, I need a part-time job. What do you do with that?
I have so many questions for that request.
I can't do anything with that. Okay, doing what? What's your background? What are your skills? Mm-hmm. So again, the more specific, to your point, the more specific you can be about it, the much easier it is for somebody to help you. And that's, at the end of the day, what you want is you want to make it as easy as possible for someone to make a referral for you.
Mm-hmm. So, with respect to the job search on the talent website, it's mentioned that 60 to 80% of jobs are filled before they're advertised. So, why is that, and how can people get access to the hidden job market?
To redesign my website. Do you put up an ad on LinkedIn, or do you ask your entrepreneur friend who just had her website done who she used? Right? It's
Mm.
usually you want a recommendation from someone who you know and trust, about who they've used to do a good job. So this is sort of how the hidden job market operates: is who do you know, who knows you, who knows who can be connected to who. And that goes for the job search as well. So if you've got a hiring manager for a job, and right now there's a lot of people applying for jobs, let's say they get 1,000 applicants. If you know the hiring manager and you can make an introduction for somebody, they're going to go to the top of that pile, and they're going to stand out, or they're going to go into a smaller pool of people who've had an introduction, and they're going to have a second look at your resume. So this is the hidden job market, is really networking, word of mouth. And a lot of women I work with create their own opportunities as well. So while you're networking and having conversations, an introduction, and they're going to have a second look at your resume. So this is the hidden job market, is really networking, word of mouth. And a lot of women I work with create their own opportunities as well. So while you're networking and having conversations with people, really saying like, Karen, what are your pain points in conversation? It doesn't have to be like a drill down, but like, what are you finding really tough about entrepreneurship right now? Well, my website is so slow. I wish I had a way to convert more leads. It would be great to build up my podcast exposure, whatever it is. But whoever's listening then says, oh, that's great. Well, I can send you through a few articles that might be able to help you. But actually, that's what I do. That's my expertise. Maybe I could help you. And now you just created a job that, Karen didn't even know existed. She didn't even know she needed it until a solution was provided for her. So that's another example of the hidden job market. And it really comes from talking to people, being first, build a relationship, propose a solution.
Yes, that's all really great advice. We kind of already touched this in the beginning of the conversation, but I'd like to know, in your own words, what do you consider to be a flexible work culture?
A flexible work culture is a culture that's based on trust and autonomy. So it's not just come into the office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. We will make an accommodation for you if you need to go to the dentist. Talk to your manager if it's your son's soccer practice. Maybe we can give you a couple of hours off. If you work from home on Friday, that's okay, but I want you to do a couple of extra hours on Thursday. That's not really a culture of trust and autonomy. So a culture of flexibility is really about, we trust you to get the job done. How, where, and when you're going to do it best, and how you're going to be a culture of trust and autonomy. So a culture of flexibility is really about, we trust you to get the job done. How, where, and when you're going to do it best, and how you're going to be most productive. So if you want to work in the morning, great. If you can get most of the stuff done in 4 days instead of 5, as long as you're available when we need you to be available, great. It shouldn't really matter. And there's actually a term called a results only work environment, which is a ROW environment, which is founded on those principles, which is, we are going to evaluate you on the results and the output you provide us with versus hours worked or bums on seat. I was hearing a couple of companies at the beginning of when COVID started, we all went into lockdown, talking about how they're giving flexible work benefits to their parents in their company. And they were saying, you can take 2 hours off to homeschool your child, but then I want you to make up that 2 hours at the end hours if they can get the job done efficiently in the time they need to get it done. So what would be more beneficial for the employee would be to say, Susie, get your job done. I don't care how many hours you take to homeschool your child. If it's going to make you happy and productive, it's going to take stress off of you. It's going to make you be able to concentrate better, and it's going to take the pressure off. So let's talk about, your top 3 priorities and focus on that. Deliver that. And then if you can't do it, we'll have a conversation about what that looks like. But ultimately, a flexible work culture has to work for both the employee and the employer.
Mm-hmm. And in your opinion, what are some examples of companies who have been successful at adopting this?
Oh, it's all changed so much in the last 7 months, flexible work before COVID was more rare. And what's happening now is everybody was forced to do a emergency remote work plan, and then implement that now as a more sustainable culture or more sustainable policy. So we've seen this big shift, and right now companies are trying to figure it out and make it work. So you have big companies like Twitter who have gone fully remote, like Shopify, which have gone, I think they're using the term fully dispersed, and a number of different companies who have gone fully remote because of COVID and what's happened and the impact there. But you also have other companies who have this blend or this mixture of some remote roles, some in-house roles, some come in when you want, some unlimited holidays. But it comes down to that core of culture. So the culture has to back it up. It has to be a culture of trust and autonomy that will give you the flexibility to do what you need when you need to do it.
Mm-hmm. And I know that tech companies and freelancers, they were among the first to adopt this. So why do you think some companies were resistant and slow to adopt this initially? Like it had to take a pandemic for them to think about flexible work culture.
I think part of it has to do with brand, right? So tech companies and entrepreneurs and startups tend to think out of the box. They tend to be a little bit ahead of the curve. I don't know, when you close your eyes and think of these kind of companies, you think ping pong tables, good work, right? Like you think, oh, good culture, collaboration. So I would say they already had the mindset to be able to make the shift quicker, and it was on brand. It made sense for them to move quickly and to be able to shift, and they had an employee base that was based around that culture, which made it easier. Other companies have a lot of tradition. Right? So before COVID, I would talk to a number of companies who said, I don't really feel that comfortable having my employees work from home. I don't know what they're up to all day. What if they're just slacking off and watching TV in the background? I don't know if they feel comfortable. I like to have people in the office where I can see them. It's better for corporate culture. It really is my preference to have everybody here. But what COVID did was it said, well, you have to learn to work remotely or your company is not going to survive. So all these naysayers before had to adapt very quickly and start implementing and get on board basically with flexible workplaces and remote work. So there's been this shift of like, oh my goodness, now it's possible. Mm-hmm. And that was some of the feedback that we actually had is we never thought we could do it. And we found out we could do it well.
Yeah, it's one of those things too. You never know until you try. And I remember my experience working from home back in 2015, and it was at a startup. So they did, again, going back to how startups and entrepreneurs have that mindset, it was basically you can get your work done as long as you get it done within these timeframes. And they really valued flexibility because they appreciated that everybody had different lifestyles and different responsibilities.
And that comes down to the diversity and inclusion piece, right? Because if you said, I'm only going to hire people who can be in our office between the hours of 9 to 5 p.m., you're cutting out a large portion of the population. Mm-hmm. And you're looking for the best talent possible to keep your company competitive within your postcode. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
So I think having access to flexible workers and having the agility within your tap into the diverse talent pool that's out there and make it feel inclusive and be inclusive, it's only going to be a win for your organization. There are so many economic, social, business challenges going on right now, and you need all brains on deck to really solve these social problems.
Mm-hmm. And do you believe that the majority of employees will continue to give flexible work options after the pandemic is over?
It's really fascinating. Every Wednesday, I look through job postings, and it's been very interesting to me to see who's changed their job descriptions. And it's not as many as I had hoped. So I had very high expectations when COVID first started. I thought this was going to be a massive catalyst to change, and we've certainly seen a huge swing in the number of companies offering some blend of remote work and flexible work policies and everything else. And that's been really positive. But some have just gone right in some blend of remote work and flexible work policies and everything else. And that's been really positive. But some have just gone right back to normal as well. So there's varying degrees of everything. And in conversation with a lot of companies right now, they're trying to figure it out as well. So they're not really ready to talk about it yet. I've had this conversation with quite a few companies actually, where they're saying, we know we can't go back to what it was, but we don't know what that blend is for our company. We don't want to go back. We don't want to go to fully remote. How do we create an inclusive culture where we can get our team and our employees the support they need to do their best, and also create a culture around all of that?
Okay, so I wanted to discuss the issue with a lot of women having to give up their jobs to spend more time taking care of their children and how that has impacted their career. I actually came across a recent article that kind of a little bit on the back burner. Do you mind going into more detail regarding that?
Yeah, so I did that interview and then I saw the headline for it and I got really mad, because this is the whole reason I started the company, was because I never wanted to choose. I never thought I should have to choose between having a career and having children. My husband doesn't choose between having a career and having children. And I got really upset that I should have to choose. But the reality is that when COVID hit and the infrastructure that allowed women to contribute more fully to the workforce was pulled out from under us, right? So we lost access to childcare. We lost access to grandparents and schooling and daycare. We lost our support staff in the house. So if some of us were lucky enough to have somebody to come in and help us clean or cook, or somebody to come in and help us clean or cook, or after school programming, all of this stuff sort of went overnight. So now you're managing 2 full-time jobs, and parenting is a full-time job. It's a full-time job on its own. It is hard work. So now you're doing full-time parenting, and schooling. So it's really 3 jobs now. So trying to teach your kids, being a full-time parent, and running your job or having your business it's really hard work. So in conversations that my partner and I had, we talked about, okay, well, I still want to do my business. You've got your job. How are we going to divvy up the hours? How are we going to allocate the responsibilities in the household now? The conclusion we came to is that somebody's career is going to have to be prioritized, because we could potentially be heading into a recession. We don't know what the economy is doing. We don't know who's going to have their job. We don't know who's going to be able to pay for anything. So if we have to prioritize one career, whose is it going to be? Whose is it going to be? Well, my husband is a primary income earner. He's got a very stable job and he is in leadership. Mm-hmm. I am the primary parent. I have a flexible job and I have my own business. So, which is basically the very definition of the gender pay gap, is that men will tend to be in higher value leadership and more stable roles and be earning more. So I will be the one who steps back and has to manage whatever has to be managed. But there was a key thing that I was missing, and I went through a really tough week actually thinking about quitting my job or stepping back, because, Karen, it gives me so much passion and joy doing what I do. I absolutely love it. It refills my bucket when I'm feeling down. All I have to do is do a bit of work and help a few people, and I'm up to a 10 again. And the thought of giving that up, I was very, very upset. There's always ways to figure it out. And during the pandemic, I was getting up at 5:30 in the morning till 8. I was keeping the kids up later so they'd sleep until 8. And I was working in the morning, and then my hours I negotiated with my husband were 4 to 7 p.m. So that became my work day. So there's solutions out there. It's just getting creative and looking at things from a different perspective, but sometimes it can be exhausting. That's why I was very pleased to send my children back to school.
I think a lot of people will agree with you on that.
But it's a hard choice. It was a hard choice because at the end of the day, my kids will win. Mm-hmm. I hated being put into a position where I felt like I had to choose, because I don't want to choose. I don't want to choose, because if I do choose, it's going to be them.
Right, for sure. So, as you know, that many people are also using this time to learn new skills or refine their existing skills. So, what would you say are some skills that women should look into learning skills or refine their existing skills? So, what would you say are some skills that women should look into learning and or further developing to stay competitive in the marketplace?
So I'm seeing a lot of demand for digital skills, which I don't think will come as a surprise to anyone. But when I'm looking through the job boards and I'm looking at what's coming up and the roles that are coming up, there's a lot around how do you bring people together digitally? How do you build collaboration? How do you build teams? How do you build community? So I would say anything in the digital or social space, social media marketing, community building, technology, getting online, running digital events, all of these skills will be invaluable in the future. And I would say mindset also. So the ability to adapt and pivot and come up with solutions, again, will be critical for moving forward because things are changing so fast. And I think Trudeau said things are going to be moving so quickly that if you want to keep up, you're going to need to foster things like adaptability, mindset, continuous learning, like being able to pick up and bounce and flow and move with things. I would say they're all developable. I'm pretty sure that's not a word. They're all, they're all skills that can be picked up and learned.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be constant learning. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's already a given, but I guess perhaps maybe for some people who have, established themselves already in a career, they feel they may not need to learn or learn as much. But again, just kind of touching on what we had mentioned with technology, that's been changing the pace of things. And who's to say that your particular job will be around in the next 10 years? I mean, you may have to reconsider a different career path, but then also be okay with that and be open to learning. Because really, honestly, I feel you're never too old to learn. It's you have career path, but then also be okay with that and be open to learning. Because really, honestly, I feel you're never too old to learn. It's you have to be willing to learn and then also be willing to apply what you've learned.
Absolutely, because it doesn't count as learning if you don't actually use it.
All right. So, my final question for you is looking back at your career path and entrepreneurial journey, was there anything in particular that surprised you along the way?
It's a very good question. I would say I never expected to be where I am now. I had this career path that took me in a completely different direction, or I was going in a completely different direction than where I am now. And it took me probably 2 years to embrace the fact that I am an entrepreneur. I'm not a reluctant entrepreneur, which is what I used to say. I am an entrepreneur, and that surprised me. I didn't think I would be an entrepreneur, and that it's
So the final one is yes. What advice would you give to people who are, thinking of getting their feet wet in entrepreneurship, but they're not sure, but they want to try?
I would say make sure that you're passionate about it. Make sure that your reason for doing it is going to keep you going. And your reason for doing it doesn't have to be like, you're saving starving children. It doesn't have to be that big of a passion or a why. It can be to have the freedom to live the life I want to live. It can be to earn extra income to travel. It could be to pick my kids up from school. Basically, what I want to say is that the product you're selling doesn't have to be that exciting. You don't have to be that excited about the product that you're selling if your why is compelling and exciting to you. And your why could be anything from picking the kids up from school, the ability to travel, having the flexibility to do your job on your term. Could be anything from picking the kids up from school, the ability to travel, having the flexibility to do your job on your terms, how you want to do it. That can be your why. Or it could be bringing a passion to life. And that for me, I have a nice combination of both, which is I'm so passionate about what I do every day and the products that I sell and how I'm helping women, but also the freedom that I get from being an entrepreneur and all the other stuff, all the other mess and all the other lows, it's worth it. It's worth it because I get the freedom to do what I want and not be told what to do. And I am delivering a product that I'm so super passionate about. And when it does get really hard, I ask myself, what do you want? Do you want to quit? because you always have choices. I can always hang it up tomorrow and I can go out and look for a job in an office or for somebody else. What do you want? Do you want to keep going or do you want to quit? And always, always I say, I want to keep going. Sure, Karen.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and stay tuned for more episodes. Ciao for now. Okay, interview is over, but we are still recording. And yeah, this is a really, obviously you couldn't tell because we were only doing audio, but it was very invigorating. Like I found myself like nodding along to like your responses and scribbling down notes. I'm like, oh, this is really good stuff. I'm like, oh, this could be a potential soundbite. So thank you so much. Cause yeah, I feel like this topic it's almost as I feel like it's kind of like a buzzword, but we need to have like more insight on it or for people to talk about it more.
Yeah, and I have found that there's a huge piece of my role that's been in advocacy. And, advocacy doesn't pay the bills, but it's so important to be having these conversations and getting people to pay attention to these conversations. Because pre-COVID, Karen, I was knocking on doors and people were answering my emails and answering my calls, and I'd have the first meeting and they'd to these conversations. Because pre-COVID, Karen, I was knocking on doors and people were answering my emails and answering my calls, and I'd have the first meeting and they'd say, yes, flexible work is important. Yes, women in leadership is important, but, we don't really have a budget. There's always a feeling of it's not that important, right? So there was no urgency around righting some of these wrongs or fixing some of these inequities. What COVID did was it unveiled systemic equities across the board, like not just gender, but race, about socioeconomic status, about everything. And it's brought all this attention onto the system and how it's fundamentally broken. Mm-hmm. And it's not equal. So I think another gift of COVID is that now we're all paying attention. Now I call companies, they're like, I would love to say they're like, how much money do you need? Because that would be amazing. But they're saying, yes, let's have more conversations. Yes, what do I need to do? So the urgency is now here.
People are reacting more and reacting quickly. Although I guess ideally it would have been nice for them to be proactive. But again, like as you said, it's good that they've realized it now.
And a lot of people are really happy with the status quo. Like there's a lot of personalities. I believe there's different kinds of personalities all over the world and they all have a role. Like everybody's personality is for a reason. So I'm a challenger and my job is to create new things, to challenge the status quo, to push for change, right? My husband is a traditionalist. His job is to keep the status quo, to keep things going smooth and normal so that we can find some sort of routine and balance. So there's all these, you've got early adopters, right? You have all these different roles and personalities, and everybody has a place to play, I believe. But the truth of the matter is that the people who like the status quo, the traditionalists, my husband never worked from home before. He always told me he can't. Now he's got a home office downstairs. Sometimes it takes a shock or a big impact or something to open up their mind and completely break that status quo. And I think that's what we've been seeing. Is that, yeah, well, it wasn't important. There was no need to break the status quo. What is it? There's a quote that says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
A lot of people are in this inertia where they don't. So COVID was this massive disruption where people had to start thinking differently. It broke the status quo and it opened up, opportunity really to create change.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to your husband being a traditionalist because my husband also had the same job actually, or has worked for the same company since his co-op term. So he's never worked for any other company. Like he's moved up the ranks obviously over the years, but it's just crazy. Whereas if you compared our career paths side by side, his is very straight, never deviating. Mine is, squiggles and zigzags all over, change to challenge, risk taker.
Yes.
And him, he's like, no, I'm just fine. I don't want to. It's really funny that you mentioned that. And also too, he had never worked from home before. And then when I was working at the startup, I think we might have had a conversation regarding this, saying, do you ever think you could work from home? He's like, no, I don't think so. I would get really distracted by everything. And then lo and behold, yes, he also has a home office set up in the basement.
I think our partners would get on very well. Yeah. My husband's been with the exact same company for 18 years since he started, he's in banking and it's extremely unusual, but they can't get rid of him or he won't go. I don't know, one or the other, but he's very happy there and he loves it. And yeah, he's happy with his routine.
Thank you again for taking the time to listen to the podcast. I would love it if you could subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, and share this podcast with your family and friends. You can follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Bacon Bits and Bites. That's bites with a Y. And on Twitter, it's baconbits_bites. Ciao for now.